It's almost considered a conventional wisdom that all environmental problems are caused by humans. And ideally, if you reduce the impacts of humans to zero, like in a wilderness, then everything's natural and you really don't have any environmental problems. They're all solved. But what we find, I mean, there's example after example where it doesn't work out that way. When I talk about what I do, you know, I bring cows on the land or use grazing animals in order to restore health to the land. They say, why do you bother doing that? Why don't you just leave it alone? You just take the cows off and it'll come back healthy. Well, we've got places that have had cattle removed for as long as 65 years. There's one place that I watch. And it's almost as bare as a tabletop there. How it happens, we go and we watch these places as this happens to them, and what we see happening in many spots. The grasses produce leaves, blades of grass, whenever they grow. And if nothing is there to graze them off, they stand there, especially out here in the desert where you don't get snow or anything to fall on them and break them off and bend them off or blow them off, and nothing steps on them. They stand there and they shade that part of the grass plant that's alive. And as they shade it, it becomes less functional. And it becomes less functional, it becomes less healthy, produces fewer blades of grass, and eventually, if that happens long enough to that plant, it will eventually die. And because things like wind and even raindrops have a tendency to pound the soil and compact it into a crust, it's very difficult for seeds of grasses, which evolved with grazers, to plant themselves. If they don't have animals coming through and scuffing and kicking and trampling, they don't get planted. So what you end up with is a slow process of desertification to where the land will end up, and in cases we've seen it become completely bare from being protected. Just to demonstrate how you can use animals to get native plants to grow, is generally we go out and we spread seed, native plant seed usually, because that's what folks are interested in. And then we generally spread some sort of forage, hay, because there's nothing to attract grazers there if there's nothing on the ground. And some of the places we're talking about are so bare that even the soil is made up of crushed rock particles that have been sterilized by various chemical processes, i.e. mine tailings. So we put down the hay, then we bring on the animals, they eat the hay, they defecate, they urinate, they stomp around, they grind in some of the hay, they grind in the seeds. Just like you do in a garden, they plant the seeds and tamp them in. And then we take the cows off and wait until we get some moisture of some sort to come. Sooner or later, even out here in the desert, it rains, and it'll absolutely blow you away what happens when the rains finally come. Well, this prejudice that grazing animals, cattle and sheep, are bad for the land, so far as I know, goes all the way back to the founder of the Sierra Club, John Muir. He tried to get grazing animals removed from the Sierras because he wanted to protect, and therefore he wanted to enhance, and he wanted to make sure that they would always be there, the beautiful meadows of wildflowers that he considered to be being destroyed by grazing animals. It's really interesting. There's an author, a woman named Mary Austin, that when Muir was writing about how they would have to remove grazing animals from the Sierra in order to protect the meadows, she was writing at the same time that the meadows are there and the meadows are blooming because of the sheep, not in spite of them. But we listened to John Muir instead of Mary Austin. If we don't make the environmentalists as accountable as we make the producers, things are just going to keep getting worse. When one side is given a free pass and the other side is assumed to do almost everything wrong, you're not getting a complete picture. You're getting a distorted picture, and you're going to manage yourself into problems, serious problems. The future of ranching is in realizing all of the different products, all of the different results, all of the different benefits it can produce. And I think that realization has to happen on both sides of the fence. It has to happen for the environmental groups, but it also has to happen to the ranchers. Well, the next step for me is to keep learning, keep working, keep coming up with ways to tell this story that help to get it across. I mean, it's one of the things, I love to take a walk in the desert and try to think of a new way to make a point. I love the land, and I love learning what it has to teach me. And I like where it takes me. It takes me into beautiful places like this. You can't get much better than that. This is my university. This is where I do all my learning.